Head coach James Borrego is back this week to talk with Matt and Chris about Noche NBA and being the league's first Hispanic head coach, as well as being mic'd up for Wednesday's game against Miami and his team's current playing groups. This is the Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Welcome to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. I'm Matt Rochinski, being joined by Chris Kroger. Before we get Coach Borrego on for a second week in a row over here, we got to talk Matt and Chris a little bit.
Yes.
Big win in Brooklyn. Let's just talk about that. What does that mean for this team to go on the road against a team they know they had to beat and come out of there with that victory?
Yeah, I think that was one of two games so far out of the All-Star break. You said you have to win this. One was against Washington, obviously, and then the other one was against that Brooklyn team. And so I think when you look at where this Hornets squad is sitting right now, you're split 1-1 on the season series with the Wizards. Now you're split 2-2 with Brooklyn. You're up 2-1, on Orlando with a game to go, which is the final game of the year. You got two games upcoming we'll talk about with Miami as well, another two with Washington to close out the season series, and you're up 3-0 in Detroit, and you still got an opportunity to play them. That'll be in the final three games of the year. That one will be in Detroit. So the Hornets right now are at least split, if not up, in every season series they need to be in, with the teams jumbled up there with them in the playoff race. So that game, especially on the road, off a frustrating loss, just 6 days prior to that in this building, I think really lifted a weight off the Hornets' shoulders. It ended a three-game road losing streak. It ended a three-game losing streak overall on the season, and the way they did it, too, by grabbing the lead in the second quarter and literally never relinquishing it the rest of the way, I think was pretty impressive.
We've both been watching this team for a while. We follow all the games. Obviously, you call every one of these games. But to me, when I was watching that game, probably more so than any game this season, I felt these guys came out with a passion and a desire to win that basketball game. They wanted to set the tone right away, and they did so from the opening tip.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it helps when you're on the road, as weird as that sounds, because it's just this bunker mentality. It's us versus the world, and so I think it helps you tap into that. And then I think, the revenge factor, there's a sense of pride. We should have won on Saturday in our building. Controversial, no call or not, the Hornets felt like they had that game in hand. They felt like they had a game in hand in Brooklyn when you go back to late December as well, the day after Christmas. So the Hornets really feel like they match up well with Brooklyn. I think that confidence before the game instilled it, and because of the playoffs tiebreakers we were talking about, the way the standings were falling, I think it just creates this playoff mentality. It felt that way. It felt that way in the arena before the game tipped off. And if you remember the first quarter, Brooklyn led a few times, the Hornets led a few times, but it was a true back-and-forth game. Both teams came out executing, which is kind of the way playoff basketball is. There's no lulls or, let's warm up for a little bit. So it was pretty fun to watch, and I just remember before the game, in the tunnel right outside the locker room, I was walking out to get to my broadcast spot, and I saw Nick Batum and JB, and Coach had a few words for him. And Nick had this look of determination in his eyes, like, I want this. We're going to go get this. And so it's kind of cool to see that player-coach interaction about 30, 45 minutes before the game. They were locked in, and I could tell, okay, this one, I don't know how this game's going to end, but I know how it's going to start and how it's going to play out, and this one's going to be back and forth, and that's how it was.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the bench factor. Obviously, Jeremy Lamb has been lighting things up for the Hornets. Yep. And then you get the return of Frank Kaminsky. Hadn't played since the All-Star break, steps in, scores 5 points early, and just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I think with Jeremy especially, outside of the Brooklyn game here last Saturday, Jeremy's been fantastic. 16 points or more in every game since he switched to that reserve unit. And I think this was the idea. A super sub type player, a Lou Williams, a Spencer Dinwiddie caliber player, where you're so much better. No disrespect to the other players, but you're so much better as a starting caliber player coming off the bench against secondary options. You're going to have a field day, and he's had a field day. He's had a field day as a starter. Now it's even better, I think, as a reserve, and it's added that scoring punch that JB was looking for, because this Hornets team went 10 straight games without having 40 points as a reserve unit. And for comparison, the first 51 games of the year, the Hornets did it 28 times. First 51 games of the year, the Hornets had the third best scoring bench in the NBA. Over the next 10, the Hornets were bottom 8 in the NBA. So it went from one extreme to the other. That's why the change happened. Coach needed to shake things up. He needed an answer. Jeremy was one of those guys. And as you said, Frank Kaminsky as well. How about Frank? 15 points, 7 boards, and then 18 points and 7 boards. He was a team high plus 15 in the loss to Portland on Sunday afternoon at the Hive.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that going down the stretch now, Frank Kaminsky, who we thought was out of the rotation, could be a huge factor in the playoff
Yeah,
race.
no, let's talk about this for a second, right? We can talk about Frank, and all credit due to him. That, by the way, that's the first time he's ever had 15 points, 7 boards in back-to-back games in his career, ever. And so you got to credit him. If you watch him, he's fighting for 50-50 balls. He's contesting tough rebounds against physical bigs down there near the basket. So he deserves all the credit in the world on that. His defense, the effort there, the intensity there, much improved. It's where it needs to be, and it's why he's keeping those minutes right now. But Coach, with over 250 lineup combinations throughout the year so far, has not been afraid to mix it up. We could agree on that, right?
Yes, definitely.
And I think this is where it pays dividends, because if you are a guy like Frank Kaminsky and you've really gone months without being in the rotation outside of cleanup time in some late game situations, and all of a sudden your number is called, you know I better be ready. And the same thing you could now say about MKG and Malik Monk as the rotation has tightened the last few games. They're on the outside looking in. Don't assume you're not going to play the rest of the year, because look at Frank. Frank went months without being in the rotation. He comes back in, he produced, and now coach is going to him and depending on him. So I think when you have that mentality as a coach of, I'm going to play the guys that I need in this moment and that are doing the things that I ask, that when your number is called, you feel emboldened and confident that I need to go do those things because coach is depending on me, and I better back it up.
Well, the thing is, you and I can speculate all we want on these things. We can make our guesses, but the only guy who knows the answer to these things is Coach Borrego.
Yep.
He'll be joining us next here on the Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Hey, Hugo, before we do this job swap, can you show me how this half-court shot thing goes? I'm not the most experienced with basketball. Yeah? Okay, great. Okay. All right, so okay, bend my knees. Oh, arms up. Oh, I'm glad I didn't ask you to show me how to dunk. How do I get down?
Either we win it or there's overtime. Lamb's gonna have to fire. Got it! Kemba bounces into a three. Enough legs to get it through.
Bud City, it started 30 years ago. You're the best fans then, the best fans now. Let's have a great year.
Welcome back to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. We're being joined now by head coach James Borrego. Coach, thanks for joining us again. It's been a week. It's good to have you back.
We're back. That was a quick week.
It has been a quick week. Tomorrow night, you guys will be taking on the Miami Heat. It's Noche NBA. For you, as the first Hispanic head coach in the NBA, is this now a time where you can sit back and reflect a little bit on it as the league is celebrating this as well?
Yeah, it's a wonderful time for our heritage to look back, reflect on my upbringing, my background, my culture, my heritage, and really be thankful for it, for where I come from, who I am, and embrace all the other cultures around us as well. I think that's what the NBA is doing such a great job, is embracing everybody, and it's so inclusive right now. And now's our time to celebrate the Hispanic heritage. And it's, when I think about that, I really think about family. Really, in my mind, growing up in a Hispanic home in New Mexico, it's I really think about family first. That surrounds that state, that culture, that heritage. And I think that's what the NBA is. It's a big family, and I think that's reflected through this honoring of the Hispanic heritage.
Yeah, I remember you telling me as a kid you're growing up in Albuquerque, and you went to a different school, you went to a charter school, and just all different types of kids. But you said you never felt isolated. People loved you for who you were and accepted you and poured their energy and their effort into you, and that's why you're here today. So I think that kind of speaks to what diversity means in our league.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's no cap, or in the NBA, we're all one happy family. We have our ups and downs, obviously, but it's inclusive, it's progressive right now. You're seeing doors open left and right, and I'm an example of it. To be the first Hispanic head coach it's an honor, but it's really more a reflection of what's going on in the NBA right now. So, it's just a blessing to be a part of an organization like this. But going back to New Mexico, I was embraced from day one at my school. I grew up with white friends, black friends, Hispanic, you name it, but we all just loved each other, pulled for each other, and that's what I was used to. So, and I think we're seeing that here in the NBA as well.
You mentioned it's so much about family to you. When you think about other families and other kids growing up who might be sitting there and seeing a James Borrego out there coaching, does that kind of hit you that you might be one of these people that these kids are looking up to right now and saying, I can do this too? Well,
that's been my message all along. It's really not about me. I've been fortunate along my journey. I've tried to put my work in, but I just want to be an example for young people, no matter where you're at, males, females, wherever you're from. The sky's the limit for you. I never knew I'd be here. I never thought I could, sit in a head coaching seat in the NBA, but here I am today. So put the work in, go after it. Don't limit yourself. Surround yourself with good people. You need a lucky break here and there, like I got. But put your time in, and you never know what's possible. And I'm just trying to be an example for those young people.
You get a lot of great opportunities working in this league, especially as an assistant coach, a head coach. But when you think back to your days in San Antonio, even in Orlando, you coached a lot of international players. And now here we got Billy, we got Tony, we got Nick, you got Bismack. We represent just so many parts of the globe only on our team. And I think the number this year was over 170 international players on rosters across the NBA. So basically a quarter of our league is international now. Wow. Does that ever blow you away too? You think about, man, I've been around some of the greatest, especially when you talk about a guy like Tony and Manu in San Antonio, but just great international players, and we've watched that grow over the last decade or so.
Yeah, just great flavor, different types of players, bring a wealth of different cultures to the mix. It's like this melting pot, and it's beautiful. And I was fortunate to be in San Antonio where that was embraced. They're one of the first organizations, not the only, but one of the first to really look outside our borders for talent, and really capitalized on that with Manu and Tony and many others. But I think the league caught on to that as well. But I think Pop and RC were at the forefront of a lot of that, and I think they would credit some other people before them as well. But looking to outside our borders to really enhance our game and look for talent, and it just gives you a whole different perspective on the world when these guys enter your locker room. They speak different languages, they come out of different cultures, the different foods, and just they have a whole different experience that they bring to the table when you add them to the mix. So it's fun to watch these guys interact, and the best parts are sitting down at dinners with them.
Yeah.
The whole team sitting at dinner, and just coming together as a group.
Fox Sports Southeast will also be giving a different look of things outside the locker room on Wednesday when they mic you up.
Oh, all right, here we go.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
okay.
Chris
Watch your language. Watch your language.
Is there any pressure knowing that you're going to be mic'd up, or how are you going to approach that one?
Be myself, I'll leave that to the editors, I guess. No pressure. No, we just do our thing. We'll coach the game, big game for us. So I can't worry about the mic, but I'll. Hopefully the fans enjoy it. It gives them an insight into what we're thinking, what I'm thinking. If they got a full glimpse of what I was thinking, that could be dangerous on the court.
Thank you for the editor.
Yeah, thank you, editor. Mike Cristaldi, be careful out there. So, I look forward to it. Hopefully the fans enjoy it.
Are you looking at your team right now and saying, hey, look, we're trying to find a rhythm, we're trying to find an identity, and it seems like some of the things you're seeing on the court are proving towards that, even though maybe some of the results haven't been there yet?
Yeah, I think we've seen, some nice trends. Obviously, The loss last night wasn't what we were looking for, but I think we've got a spark here. We have some things moving in the right direction. We just got to close out games and be more efficient down the stretch. This time of the year, we're looking at every option right now. Everything's on the table. We need a win every single night, and right now we're shortening the rotation. We're playing a limited rotation right now, hoping to find some rhythm and get guys going. And we'll continue to look at that, and other guys have to step up. I'll continue to look at the bench, making certain tweaks, but I'd love to stay as consistent as we can right now and just keep building.
That first tweak you made with Jeremy moving to the reserve lineup, he's come out and just been playing gangbusters, just been playing absolutely amazing. But he's also been not only scoring at a high clip, he's also been contributing in so many other ways in terms of rebounding, assisting. Have you seen him kind of develop part of his game coming off the bench?
Yeah, I have. I mean, he's trying to play make for us, but as I watched the film from last night, he's just so aggressive right now. He's putting tons of pressure on the rim. He's got a bounce to his step. He's very dynamic right now in transition, so he's creating a lot of offense for us. He's trying to rebound every possession defensively. He's got his nose in there, digging it out, trying to get every rebound, looking to make plays for others, defending as well. So Jeremy's playing probably his best basketball of the season right now, which is saying a lot. He's had a great year, and he's playing very well for us right now. And we have him coming off the bench, but he's playing significant minutes. He's playing meaningful minutes. So that's been big. And I think it's helped Nick as well. I think Nick has become more aggressive with that first unit. So the balance of the two is what we were looking for. I think we have that. Now we just got to continue it through that fourth quarter and close out these tight games.
You've been talking about Nick. He's now, I think, riding a streak of 7 straight games of multiple three-pointers made, one of the longest streaks of his career. And you look at what he's done on the defensive end, it's been really good all year. But, Coach, could you speak to how great it's been over the last few weeks against some of the toughest covers in the NBA? I think Nick Batum might be playing elite-level defense out on the wing.
Yeah, I feel like he's been doing it all season, but especially of late, he's gotten that assignment on top-tier point guards, 2 guards. He did a great job on Lillard again last night. Russell, it's been all season, but that's a credit to him. He's found a way to impact this team and help this team. So he's not only doing it on the offensive end, but the defensive end right now. I think he's having his most efficient, one of his most efficient years statistically right now offensively. He's shooting the ball very well. But to your point, his defense really sets the tone for us. If he's not defending right now, I think our defense is slipping, a ton. So give him a lot of credit. He's competing right now, giving us everything he has.
You also mentioned that down the stretch, you're not going to be afraid to make other tweaks to the lineup. You made one a couple games ago, putting Frank in to the reserve unit as well. For you, much like when we talked to you about putting Miles into the starting lineup, what goes into that process to make the decision that Frank is now the guy we're going to turn to?
Well, I've been watching Frank the last couple of weeks. It's been a frustrating year for Frank, and this is new for him, having been in the rotation basically his entire career. At the position I envisioned for him, we're just loaded at that spot as Frank entered this season, and it was very competitive between he, Billy, Biz, and Cody. That's a pretty loaded group. Trying to move MKG to more of the 4 spot, complicated for Frank. You add Miles to the mix that can play both the 3 and the 4. That complicated it. So it sort of put Frank on the outside in a very competitive group, but he stayed ready. So he stayed ready through this entire process, put his work in. Our season has evolved, in certain ways, but he's maintained his development, his growth on the court in practice. And so I've been watching him the last couple weeks, and he's had a real impact in our practices, and I think that gave me a comfort to insert him at the right time. And, you never know as a coach when you're going to call on somebody, but I had been watching him. He stayed ready, did his work. I think we needed a spark with that second unit. So that was really the hope, is by inserting him, he would give us a spark offensively, which is what we needed. And playing him with Biz is a good combination. I think Biz gives us that defense, the toughness, the rebounding. You put him next to Frank, that's a good combination for us. So it felt right at this time, and he's had 2 very good games for us.
Yeah, I think what's crazy is you can look at the box score, and this is the first time in his career he's had back-to-back 15.7 rebound games in his entire career. But you watch just the things that belie a box score, the effort, the hustle plays, contested rebounds. those are the things that he's coming out with energy and confidence to me, which has probably allowed him to play so well.
Yeah, I think and that's where he has to sustain it, and I think Frank is capable of doing this. Those effort plays, those 50-50 balls, that rebounding, those are things he has to really work at, and he's doing that. And I think he feels a responsibility to the group. Now, here's my shot. I got to go for it. Coach is giving me a shot. My team needs me. I'm going to give you everything I have. I think we've seen that. Even watching the film last night, he's challenging shots. He's trying to rebound. He's defending. He's spreading the floor. He's driving the ball. And I think we know what we have out of him offensively. It's these other pieces around that he's growing in. I think he's really valuing right now.
When you're making these changes, there's going to be some growing pains, so to speak, maybe in other areas. First quarters right now, this team is allowed 30 points or more in 9 consecutive games. What is it going to take to get this team to get that number? We know that's an important number. You get under that 30. What does this team have to do in these first quarters?
Well, we just got to come out with more urgency and attention to detail. That's really it. It'd help if guys miss shots. It'd help if guys miss shots. They have a vote and our opponents get a piece of this, but we've got to do what we can do as a defense. We got to come out with more urgency, more physicality, and we've talked about it. This isn't something that's we hide from or we shy away from. We talk about it every single game before the game. We just got to go out and do it now. That's just the bottom line. We got to come out and have pride about our defense, be more urgent than our opponents. And I think scoring the ball helps. If we go dry those first 5-6 possessions, they tend to get out and get early stuff. So it's a combination of defending, but running good offense, scoring the ball helps as well.
Well, that schedule right out of the All-Star break, we knew it was going to be home heavy. We also knew it was going to be tough because you had Houston, Golden State, Portland, three of the top teams in the Western Conference. You were in it with all 3 of those teams. You beat Washington, you split with Brooklyn, you get a big win on the road. It kind of feels like as we start this week, okay, now it's really buckle down time. You got 2 more matchups with Miami and Washington coming over the next few weeks, and now it feels like whatever's happened before, let's wipe the slate clean and let's make a playoff push with 19 games to go.
Yeah, we're still right there. We're still right there against teams that we're right in the mix with. It starts with Miami, and I think we all understand. We look at our schedule, we know what's ahead of us, but these are 2 very important games coming down the line this week, and it starts with Miami. We've had 2 good wins against them, but they're playing very well. We got to be ready for their physicality. Speaking back to the first quarter, they're a quick starting team. They're going to come out aggressive. We got to come out aggressive. We got to be the dictator. We got to hit first, and I think that's where it starts. Is our mentality's got to come out and be aggressive from the start. So we're right there. We're still in the mix. We control our own fate right now, and it starts on Wednesday night.
Huge games Wednesday and Friday here at home. How big was that game against Brooklyn to get that road win for these guys to know that in crunch time, in this playoff push, this is a team that can go into another team's building and really take control of the game?
Yeah, I think we came out of the game with a lot of confidence. I think we went in with a determination, like we're going to get this game. We need this game, and I think that's the mentality on Wednesday night. We need this game. You never want to say a must-win game, but we have to go get this game, and I think we had that mentality in Brooklyn. So we came out of there with a confidence, a belief that we can win on the road. We just got to build on that and carry that over.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I got to see you and Nick a little bit right before the game, and you guys were talking to each other, getting each other ready for the game. And I watched Nick the last few weeks. He gets a lot of criticism from fans and everybody, but he has this look of determination right now. His care factor is just ultra high, and that's that determination I think that needs to lead your team moving forward.
Yeah, and the more of those guys we have, the better. And Nick's one of those guys that does care, wants to get in the playoffs. You got Tony that's made the playoffs every single year. He's pushing for it. Kemba, I can go down the line, but we need 15 guys that are determined and to get this done. We're going to need all 15 guys. You never know when your number's going to get called. Nick is determined right now. Other guys are. We just got to go get the job done.
It's great to see these guys getting locked in. We know this guy is locked in, and he is ready for this playoff push. We're looking forward to seeing how things are going to shape up from here going forward. We'll be right back on the Hornets.com Coaches Show. Welcome back to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. We just heard Coach Borrego talk about Noche NBA and what it means to him. Obviously, it's a big night for the Hornets, not only for Noche NBA, but we need this win against Miami.
Yeah, we gotta get this this victory in terms of tiebreaker scenarios. If you win this game, you're up 3-0, guarantees you a head-to-head tiebreaker with the Heat, and you don't have to worry about sweating it out in the fourth and final game, which will come up not much longer. It'll just be a few weeks. Yeah, next week. We got a few weeks away from that one. So, yeah, guarantees you that head-to-head tiebreaker. And these games count double when you think about everybody jumbled up in the playoff positioning right now, the way things are stacked up. Now Detroit has leapfrogged Brooklyn after the weekend in terms of the sixth spot. Brooklyn, by the way, in a little bit of a tailspin. You know, I think they were a great story. I still think they're going to be hurt from in this playoff race. But, you know, I think the injuries, what's odd about it is when the injuries happened to Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie at separate times, they were able to actually not only sustain play, but improve in weird ways. Other guys stepped up. And I think now that they're back, this team doesn't quite know how to play with one another. And I think that's why maybe, especially so on the defensive end, they're backtracking a little bit. So got to keep an eye on Brooklyn, but Detroit's leapfrogged into sixth. Now you got Brooklyn in seventh. The Magic, as of right now, by 2/100ths of a decimal point, are in the eighth spot over the Hornets. They got one more win, but also one more loss, so that's why the percentage is also a little different. But the Hornets are up 2-0 in that series, and then you got Miami right behind the Hornets, and Washington still kind of sort of hanging on by a thread, and that'll be Friday, so must wins.
Miami, you mentioned as before we started talking about this that we haven't seen them since games 3 and 8. How is this team different now?
Yeah, you know, they made some trades, interesting trades at the deadline. I think try to get under the luxury tax line. I think to try to give themselves a little financial breathing room. And so Tyler Johnson, who the Hornets were actually interested in a few years ago in restricted free agency, ultimately signed an offer sheet, I believe, with Brooklyn, then Miami matches. He's now gone. They sent him away in a trade. Wayne Ellington, former Tar Heel, who's an electric three-point shooter, was sent away. And now he's landed in Detroit, oddly enough. So that decision actually is one you look at and you think, that might come back to bite you because you allowed one of the electric three-point shooters in this league to latch on with another team in the playoff race. So interesting stuff, but all you need to know is this. Goran Dragic is back from injury. He's always been a handful against the Hornets. Him and Kemba always seem to go back and forth. Dwayne Wade, Father Prime, one last dance. He's still getting it done. We saw his heave to beat the Warriors last week. So this team's not going to go away without a fight. It's textbook Miami Heat basketball led by Coach Spoelstra. They're just gritty, and they're going to fight and claw, even though maybe that they don't have the personnel that they had when we saw them back in October.
And then you said Friday night, Washington's in town. It's another classic night for fans. Larry Johnson bobblehead night. Make sure you get here early to get your Larry Johnson bobblehead.
Gold tooth and all.
Gold tooth and all. It's a pretty tight bobblehead. Make sure you guys come out to grab it. But what do you got to do? We just beat the Wizards recently.
Yep.
Just kind of build off that to get another win.
Well, that one's going to be tough, too. We saw it a few weeks ago. You know, now that they've made their trade as they brought in Jabari Parker and Bobby Portis right before the deadline from Chicago, they're an electric offense. They just score at will. And so the Hornets were able to take a win against them here a few weeks ago, but it's not going to be easy. I think you look at the record, you think, well, there's a team 10, 11 games under 500, no big deal. But, man, are they high-powered? And obviously Bradley Beal has had an incredible year. In my estimation, I think it's going to come down to Kemba and Bradley Beal for the final All-NBA spot for guards in the Eastern Conference, or for the NBA, I should say. So, you know, I think we saw Beal go for 40, you know, the last time we saw him. And so I think that tells you he knows that, right? These guys know the game within the game. So that one's going to be really tough as well. And I think Coach talks about this a lot. For the Hornets to have a chance with defense, their offense has to play well. You know, their offense has to put the ball in the bucket. They have to come back and be able to get set in the half court. If you're taking the ball out of the net all night and you're running in transition on the defensive end, it's just off of misses, it's going to be a long night. And so, much like Brooklyn, we talked about that earlier, when the Hornets were firing on all cylinders on the offensive end, your defense has a lot better chance to succeed, and that's what happened. So they got to recreate that.
Overall, next week when we're sitting here at this point in time, how much of a better feel are we going to have for this team and its playoff chances, depending on how things go these next couple games?
I've got a real confidence. I know you could look and say, well, this team 2-4 out of the All-Star break, and you beat Washington, you beat Brooklyn. Those are wins you had to have. You would have liked to beat any one of those 3 Western Conference teams, Golden State, Houston, Portland. The Hornets were in all 3 of those games. And then even the game you lost against Brooklyn, same thing. Here, you felt like you should have won that one too. So the Hornets are playing much better basketball, especially so over the last 3 or 4 games where the second unit started to come alive. I do think, and Coach said this the other night, he said, I hope this is the last change I have to make. He's, we've talked about it. He's willing to make changes, but he said, look, I hope this is our group going forward. I want this to be our group going forward. And I think if the Hornets lock into that mentality, guys, it's us. This is it. This is the final hurrah, Custer's last stand, whatever you want to say. I think that'll bode well. And you've got games coming up over the next few weeks that are really teams that you just have to beat right around you in the playoff race.
We know Coach is focused, the guys are focused, we're focused.
Yeah, we're locked in right now.
We know you fans are focused as well, and we all can't wait to see how this stuff shakes out. We'll see you next week on the Hornets.com Coaches Show.